Brannos, you're muted.
Mute. This works a lot better. I thought I'd start the day in mute, and we'll go from there. Given that start, I'm going to warn everyone a little bit. I am unprepared, unlike many of my good other coaches here. I'm going to do my best tonight to remember all the classes we did at Pennsic, but there were a lot. And I have to say, I was very happy that we added some new coaches. Thank you, Antigone. And we added Randall and Bobby, who is Grace from Callantyre, Robert, and a few others like His Majesty from the West, Sig. They all did a great job, and they really their classes we're going to try to cover a little bit, but we may not remember point to point. But we're going to cover the stuff that we do remember, because that's probably the most impactful from what they had mentioned. We had a lot of classes, so bear with us. We're going to probably speed through some of them. And in fact, so everybody knows, we're going to skip the footwork ones that kind of like the reminders from last year. We just wanted to go through some of those to remind people feet are important, and of the drills that we have available out there, not only from the symposium at Pennsic 51, but now more from Pennsic 52. So we have quite a few of those online, including just many footwork drills that Louis and Sive and I did during COVID and after, all out on our YouTube page. So we hope you guys enjoy that. We definitely had a lot of hits in the last week as I posted these up day by day. And thank you very much for kind of coming out and visiting with us. First, I'd like to thank Guillaume for double doing it today. He's our producer. He has lots of windows he's going to have to pop up. And he also did a class this year, and I was very happy with the class. It was fun. And we're going to talk about that, because we're going to talk on, a little bit on what he learned. Same with her Grace Antigone and what she learned, why she did some classes, because I kind of pushed her outside her comfortability zone there. But, I like doing that with coaches, because I think we just become better when we constantly are pushing ourselves a little bit more each time. So, and that was we'll talk about that later, though. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about Pennsic, is how many people came out, especially, peers and, from other kingdoms that wanted to learn the classes and do them so they could help others in their areas, and how many royal peers came out and watched. You would think, hey, I know it all, I'm not going to bother. But it was quite the opposite, and it was very nice to see. So, Guillaume, so we have we kind of grouped some of these classes by people. So let's go ahead and start. What's our first class we got started?
So before we get into the videos, we are not going to share the videos for the footwork drill classes, the ladder drills. Those videos are available. I don't know, Brannos, if you've shared the list with the chat yet for the different videos, but those are available on the Coach's Corner YouTube page in the video section. We're not going to share those because we've covered the footwork drills several times, and so we don't want to spend a lot of time during this session going over those. So the first thing we're going to come up with is the close combat techniques, technique at different ranges with Kern and Tarek. So let me go ahead and cue that up. All right. So with this course, it was a lot of different ways that they're working at different ranges and applying different shots, different angles that they're using for attack to be able to change hand position, to be able to get the blade where they want the blade to go. Did anybody have anything specific they wanted to talk about with this one?
I believe this is the class they showed kind of that, what they called the grass cutter, wasn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Which actually I've tried a couple of times because I thought it was super interesting.
I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, if people get a chance to listen and watch this one, they go through some shots that I have actually never thought about much or seen or understood how they actually do it. And it was very interesting seeing some of those. Here they're demonstrating a little bit of offside work, just a squat drop. But there was some of the little hook wrap, kind of these rolling behind the shoulder and up shots that I was like, I'm going to have to try those. And I actually did. I still got a lot of work to do on them, but it's always kind of interesting to see and kind of get excited about learning a shot. So anybody else get that feel from some of this class about angles?
Yeah, so there were a couple of shots that he threw that I was not used to throwing, what he calls the retique, so the thumb leader offside head, which is a shot that I just never have really tried, not shot that's common local to us. So that was nice to be able to see that. And he also had the changing levels with that. What you had queued up originally was the changing levels to throw that shot. It was nice to be able to work through some of those things where we were practicing as well. So give you the feel for what it's like to actually drop and get under that shield.
Yeah, I really liked both of their classes because, yes, some new shots, some new perspectives, some new things I haven't tried before. None of it, I would say, was necessarily like world changing, oh my God, crazy, but it was nice seeing people who fight from our same basic A-frame that we use here, but doing different things with it and sort of broadening my own perspective of, oh, I could do that. I could try that. That's a different way to think about that. And that was really fun.
And this, what he was talking about is attacking the arm of a lefty, is if you're fighting as a righty, how to actually come in and basically try to get into that arm before it's so you stay out of range while throwing that. The question from Michael Peters was, it's a J hook. So the grass cutter is a low hook into the back of the leg, but it drops backwards rather than coming forwards to start it.
I was trying to see if I could find it, and I haven't been able to really catch it in the little preview window to know for sure where it's at, where they're talking about it.
Yeah, I think that was the most interesting part is like you draw them up and then you're like dropping, and instead of like a little J hook that usually comes in front of you, it's this big, huge rolling. So that sword is totally clear, disappears a little bit, and then comes up in this angle, right? Like I said, Kern does this wonderfully. They both had actually, they both did a really nice job working together on their classes. They obviously, you could tell that they work together all the time. I had an opportunity to fight Kern a couple Pennsics ago, and I tell you, if you get the opportunity and want to fight world-class fighter, he is definitely it.
So real quick, one of the things I wanted to point out with this is that, as you can see through this whole video, they're actually using foam swords to train. And that was a theme that we really saw through all of our Coaches Corner classes. Most of them is that we really employed the foam weapons in order to kind of be able to train out of armor. And I thought that was really, really helpful, especially with a lot of the newer fighters that ended up showing up and wanting to train and kind of were a little hesitant. But when they saw we were doing it with foam, they're like, yeah, I'll totally jump in and try this. So I think that was really, really great that we definitely incorporated that into most of the classes.
Yeah, it was actually very interesting, including our episode at Pennsic at the end. We talked a lot about foam and safety, and I found it super interesting that, essentially the heavy KEM, Society KEM was there, and I had some questions for him about foam. And, one of the pieces he mentioned was they didn't specify training weapons specifically, because they are not combat weapons, but they expect that people are creative in their training methods. And that, in fact, his practice with out there, they are actively looking in all of the communities and building what really end up being foam, amp guard, bell guard, dagger hair swords right now, and actively using them at their practice all the time. So in fact, we'll talk a little bit about that later, but, they gave us a couple swords that were built just like it, look a lot like those. You can actually go and buy those online from foam groups, or you can make them. I'm hoping that we get another video on how to make these specifically. But I really enjoyed how many people found the idea of foam a good method of training. So.
Yeah, Guillaume, I think it was on the beginning of his stuff that he was talking about the grass cutter, or it was on another class, one or the other. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm going to check, and maybe it's in the other class. Just a brief reminder for everybody watching. All of these videos are available in the video section of the SCA Coaches Corner YouTube page. If somebody's able to share the link to that in the chat, that would be great. I am sort of buried in Windows right now.
I got it right here. All right, we'll share it out there. Bingo. Yeah, and if you go to, once you're in there, you can go and look at the newest stuff, and most of that will come up. Also, just so everybody knows, I'm going to work with Sadb, and we're going to post not only this year's symposium, but also Pennsic 51 symposium videos, so that everybody can see them.
Separate list instead of being buried within the main giant episode list.
So, and we'll try to get actually a couple links and reminders out there of where you can find all the episodes and everything we have done, so that you have a easier way to search for that. It's a Google Doc.
All right. So this is the second video that was also from Kern and from Tarek. This one is Combat Deception, and it covers similar territory, and it's a lot of disguising the shots and selling an idea to your opponent and then doing something different than what you're making it look like you're doing. And I think these two went together very well in how to apply the shots at different ranges, and then also how to work with your opponent's perception and what they're seeing, what they're picking up, and trying to disguise what it is that you're actually trying to do. I'm still trying to find that the grass cutter shot, and I haven't been able to find it.
So, one nice thing is, and you can see how they both classes, they're reading off essentially a little cheat sheet or a notes
I think that's us practicing it,
Course out
right over there. But so, the good part was they spent some real good time kind of laying these classes out and trying to get through them. I was very impressed by them putting their notes together and bringing them out and going through each piece. They did a very nice job of managing the class time,
and then
including
you had a QR code for feedback.
Yep. And you can see here, they had a lot of people for their classes. And if you look around, almost everybody's using foam. So we can practice without helms, not worrying about being hurt. We can touch people's elbows and stuff like that. I think it was really productive in this way. But good part is they had a little bit of lecture and then a little bit of exercise. And I think the thing that we have to remember is there's lots of different learning styles. And I think the good part is they covered those learning styles. So you had lecture for those that need to understand it first, and then demonstration visually of what they're going to do, and then actual activity where you did it so that you could have success and feel what the shot feels like. And what's good about a class like that when you put it together is that you're touching the base on almost everybody's anybody who has a different learning style. You're doing a nice job introducing it all the way through.
Somewhere in here near the beginning is where the grass cutter is supposed to be. I'm not sure exactly where it was, though.
While you keep looking at that, I do want to mention that Kern definitely had an individual that was his TA the entire time. I will say that as a fellow person who sometimes unexpectedly gets a lot of people in their class, having a TA was a blessing. And for my module class, I didn't have a TA, and I really wish I had. So I like that we're incorporating having people come in and kind of be a co-teacher or a TA that can kind of help pick up some of these things, because it's really difficult once you get past about 10-15 people to start instructing 30 plus. It's hard.
Yeah, and I think I think one interesting part is TA is the teacher's assistant. One big important part about that is that they understand you don't always have a chance to do that, because sometimes you're kind of flying somewhere on your own. Hopefully you have somebody go in there that already had your class and that had already been working on your things. They make a wonderful teacher's assistant. I've been lucky enough, even when I go to Europe, that, I've had some people there that do exactly what I do. But there are other times that you don't have that. So what you have to do is enable people to try to help and understand, and also enable them to ask questions. In other words, hey, we're not quite getting it. Then you know where to go to, but you really have to let people know it's okay. So if you're ever in a class and you're in those scenarios, Antigone's 100% right. You get over, 10, 15 people, it starts getting difficult to watch everybody at the same time. You have to present the class a little bit different. And it takes time to go from one person to another person, adjusting them. So just be aware, if at home, bring somebody with you. If it's not too far away, grab somebody that understands what you do. And if you're far away, then make sure they understand limitations and how they might help you, teach class most effectively in a larger class scenario.
And to complement that with the other teaching method they use, I really enjoyed being able to break out, try something, go back. It really reinforces, for me at least, the way I learn it, reinforces, okay, I can actually do it. And then they were able to correct, having both of them be able to correct and make sure we were doing it at least the way they thought we should be doing it.
Yes, I agree. And I thought both these guys did a great job with that, actually.
Yeah.
Just rolling from one person to the other. Warning, we tried a different audio on this one. So
it only took 15 minutes. We found it.
So we tried a little bit of different audio. If everybody noticed, we got new mics this year that worked really well. So we were really happy with them. We still had to train the people that are actually running these. That includes me mostly, just because a lot of times I forget some things. So, and we're going to try to work on a little bit more video next year, a little better video next year. But this really worked out for us. The microphones worked great. I hope you enjoy them, and we're definitely. But in this episode, we're still tweaking mics. I thought we'd give each of them a mic and make it so that 2 mics could be used. The problem is they use one channel apiece, so you'll hear one person in one ear, and you'll hear the other person in the other ear. Was not a great experience. So just be aware. We understand that now. It's probably a much better experience if you're sitting at a table and you're just doing one person to another person back and forth. That probably works wonderful. But they were walking around, and it made it much more difficult. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Let's see. So next is Lead Follow.
This was mine. So this was only the second or third time I think I have formally taught this class. So it is still a work in progress. But I think the content is doing pretty well. The biggest thing I learned as the teacher on this one is that I need to do a better job of what we were just talking about, interspersing all right, we talked about it, now let's go try it, and then go back and talk about it again, instead of just trying to blast through the entire lecture portion and then do all of the trying things at the end.
Well, but the good part is you kind of fixed that halfway through. So that was good.
So I really like that we were able to have this class before the class I did, because I was able to reference a lot of the stuff that you did and build on top of it. I think this class is really good and is a really good introduction for learning how to keep the proper spacing with your opponent and be able to read what your opponent is doing, react to what your opponent is doing, and stay in the position that you want to relative to your opponent. So really good class, and I think really good for an introduction to being able to move around and not just walk up to your opponent and fight. I
can give a real quick sort of overview of the actual class topic for those that were not there or haven't watched this yet. And it's really about trying to give an overview, an introduction to even the concept of controlling the fight. Who is leading, who is following, what does that feel like? And more importantly, the big thing was I'm trying to emphasize with this class, not just what it is, but technique for how to learn it or teach it to someone else. So especially because we ended up with a lot of people taking this class at Pennsic that were not brand new fighters and maybe don't struggle with this as much themselves, but maybe have a bunch of people they want to teach. We ended up getting to put the emphasis real heavily in this iteration of the class on how do you teach someone else how to do this, and running through the drills, and how to play each role in the drill as the learner and the teacher to really help someone learn step by step what does it actually mean to control a fight as opposed to just being along for the ride.
I want to highlight what you just said there for a moment, because it is something that I struggle with in teaching this drill. I have a bad habit of, rather than letting the student control the fight, of inadvertently taking control from them. And so it was a really good thing to practice during this drill of not taking control away when I'm not supposed to be. And so that's the takeaway I had as a coach, of making sure to give space for that student to be able to do the part they're supposed to do, and not fall into habits of how it would work in a fight.
I think this class is also a great example of, sometimes we assume people know what we mean when we say taking control of a fight or leading and following in a fight. And I think this is a great example of, sometimes you just have to do it to say, okay, it's like, well, just like saying everyone knows how to throw a flat step. Well, not necessarily until they're taught how to do it. And so I think this is a great example of taking Sadb took a skill that, was like, oh, how do I teach this piece? And I think it was a great class for that.
Yeah, I have to say, this is, and Sadb, I may be a little biased, obviously, but this was much different than many of the lead follow stuff that we've done. A lot of lead follow stuff in little bits. And I thought this was one of my favorite classes, because it really, I think, distilled the fundamental idea of lead follow and how it works in the fight game. And I think it's so important that people really understand when they have control or don't have control. I think some people, and you ran into this part, think they have control when they don't really. And it's because they haven't really broke the skill out yet. And here you clearly define what is lead and follow and the skill around it. And then you not only talk about it and demonstrate it, but again, you help people feel it because this is a real feel type of one. You help people feel what it feels like so that they can really understand it.
Yeah, on kind of that note, my favorite misconception where people think they kind of know what we're talking about and discover in the middle of the class they don't is the difference between lead follow and push pull. So many people conflate those and think they are the same thing. And as I will tell you in this class, push and pull are both lead. So
that's right.
Here's your sneak preview. You can watch the whole class for more.
Yep. And I would really strongly suggest folks actually watch this one. It's important, especially for coaches. I had an issue just like Guillaume mentioned. And this is Sadb had thought she had figured it out until I was like, you haven't. And I had to let go.
No idea.
And I had to be literally, I'm going to follow you. And it's very difficult. But I think now I'm even a better coach at all the other times I need to let go and let people do things and not block automatically and not do all of these other things, give some openings, do these kinds of things that allow people on the other side to feel success and learn better.
I'll have to say this was definitely my favorite class. I got a lot out of it. I also was really lucky that I partnered with another unbelt who, was understood how to give lead and everything else. We were able to switch off really easy and not have to fight for it. So it was really instructional for me. One of the things I want to say about this class is that this transfers to all kinds of fighting. It's not just armored combat. This concept transfers to fencing, CNT, foam fighting, like pretty much any combat that's out there. this concept transfers to. So even if you're not an armored fighter, you should definitely watch this class, because this concept will transfer and be useful to you. And it's a game changer, honestly. Like, as soon as I started incorporating just the basics of this into my fighting, it was a completely different fight that a lot of people had out of me. So I really appreciated this class, and Sai teaching it, and the way that she presented it was great.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and move on.
All right, so next we have taking space, list position, awareness, and control. So this was my class, and this one, I think, like I said, I was really glad that Sadb's lead follow came first, because I think in a lot of ways this builds on the things that you learn in lead follow. This is a lot more about the why of what we're doing with lead follow and what you're trying to accomplish, and some of the psychology that goes into it, in addition to the physical positioning that you get with the lead follow. And so I was pretty happy with how things went overall. I don't think that I really missed anything in the notes that I had. I had a really good TA with Brannos helping out, so that was good. And he was able to cover some of the gaps that I had in presenting some of the stuff. So I think that worked really well.
Yeah, I think the part I liked the best here is this was like really the first, you've been teaching classes and doing stuff with people in Eldamir for a long time. This is really that first chance you've had to be really open to a class on a society level a little bit. Yep. So it was nice to get a chance for you, because you've been part of this for a long time, to actually go ahead and put something together. And I thought you did a great job putting it together. You found the original article on this. We use this all the time. Here you can see we use barriers or cones as the list field. And we talk a lot about essentially controlling that person in that list field and trying to get them up to the point. Here we're just practicing back and forth to the edge of the list field, making sure that you understand where the list is. I have my back to it, so you don't get a chance to see it as well. So what happens is you have to have a feel. So the more you practice having a feel of being in a list and how to maneuver in a list, the better you are when you are in a list field. But for those that, it's been interesting. In fact, shortly after this, when we came, no, it was actually, I think in a pickup fight, somebody mentioned, is like, even without a list field, you're constantly hurting people and pushing them like practically off the whole field, right? Yep. And it's the idea is you're controlling your opponent. And in this idea, Guillaume presented a boxing video that I think we actually covered in an episode, or at least we covered as a discussion out on the page, about pushing people into and against the ropes, and not pushing them through the ropes, but pushing them to the edge where they have to start thinking about not only the person they're fighting, but the ropes behind them, and how to escape from that, how to maneuver in that, all the bad habits. The good part is Guillaume presented all the bad habits that you might have in like constantly rotational fighting, or standing in the middle of the list, all of those kinds of things. So this is a really nice video and discussion about some fundamentals about really working inside of a list that we don't talk about much. We talk about all the fighting, but not how the list affects us and how we can use the list to affect others.
Yeah, and I think for me, the biggest takeaway that I had for it, and the thing that I wanted to highlight out of it is like I said, the psychology of it. There was a section where we're demonstrating the drill, and we talk about, it's not just about the physical position, but talked about how my mind is on escaping when I'm backed in the corner. My mind is not on how am I going to strike my opponent. It is how do I get out of this bad place. And when I'm thinking that, I'm not in control of the fight. My opponent has control of the fight and can do what they want to try and strike me. And I'm more focused on trying to escape than I am on trying to strike my opponent. And so that's advantage to my opponent. And so if you're able to apply this and get your opponent thinking about moving out of where you're putting them instead of thinking about how to kill you, you're going to have a better chance of winning that fight.
Yeah, and this is another one that applies not just to armored combat, but to any kind of combat sport where you're just trying to control space, and make use of that list field where there's a hard boundary that you have to deal with. And so making that it's part of the game, it's part of the scenario. So make use of every part of it rather than just stumbling over it.
One thing I want to point out with this is that that idea of I can't touch the list ropes, that sometimes depends upon the kingdom and the rules that you have for your list. In some kingdoms, touching the ropes doesn't really harm you. It lets you reset and do other things, and there's really no penalty for it. So I think this class was developed with the idea of that there is some sort of penalty, which I think is great, and I think that's what we should have society-wide. But just to note that some kingdoms, that's not a penalty. So while this is excellent, some people don't feel that fear of being against the list ropes because it's really not a thing.
Yep. Yeah, I think in some of that though, there is a place where if you're not, they don't care, they'll just run through the list ropes. But I think in some cases, if you get that, you create a smaller space that they believe they have to fight in, there's still that mental space of I got this area to fight in. Even some people will be like, I don't care what a list is, but it's actually hard to in your head to totally separate a line and an edge or a border. And to fight, right? So you got a fight in front of you and you have an edge in the back of you. So I think with the big piece here is understanding how to put somebody's back or create a smaller space for people to work in. And I think if you look at it that way, you may actually, it may actually work. But I agree 100%, Antigone. I think the idea if I'm running a person to the edge of the list, like Kern is, we're working on Kern doing that. You notice I'm not on the list ropes. A hold shouldn't be called. But if I go through those list ropes, he actually earned that space, right? And you should be able to, we have a position about relative position. In other words, I'm going to let you off the rope and back off 2 feet. And you can go ahead and we can start from there. And the idea of centering isn't necessarily a necessity. People need to understand the work in the space they have. Otherwise, why do we have a list field, right?
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, the same concepts apply even without a list. I've watched you at practice control people and corral them in an open field. And just within the space of the fight, it becomes psychological in that they're feeling the pressure that you're applying. Even though you're not backing them against the ropes, they still feel that pressure. It's a different presentation of the class to look at it as that applying pressure instead of backing them in the corner for that control. But I think that the same ideas can apply in space. But yeah, absolutely. If you're in a position where you can just run straight back into the ropes, reset, and continue fighting, it becomes less useful, and you've got to apply it a little bit differently to be able to get the effect from it.
Well, then I just want to be a long weapons person because I'll just do it all the time.
You can certainly make someone feel like they've been backed into a corner even when no corner exists. So
yeah, that's true. So, yeah, well done, Guillaume. I look forward to what tweaks you want to make in this next time and next time you present it.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so next we have so we've got 2 classes from Duke Tim. From Ethelmark. First one is 10 techniques for intermediate fighters.
And I'd love to say that, but I mean, I thought these were just really good. Some of this was really good fundamental things and understanding of how a technique works. As usual, Tim has done a lot of classes, and you can tell. I was very happy that he offered to join us and teach a couple classes.
So the one thing I really liked about this class, I mean, what I really got thinking about after this class was he was talking about, how long does it take you to recover and throw another shot? And so if you're just throwing a tick-tock back and forth, it doesn't take any time to recover. You're able to throw basically every beat. But if you throw something like a deep wrap, now your opponent has basically a free shot while you recover. And so some of his discussion was how you actually go through and basically anticipate someone else throwing something that takes longer to recover from, and then seize initiative from that, because you basically have a free shot. And I thought that was a really interesting observation that I really hadn't, I hadn't heard expressed that clearly before.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know, it's interesting now. It's something that I've added to pointing out to people. You know, I think that was a really nice understanding to help people understand if you're throwing, you know, depending on the shot, depends on how your reset has to be. If you have to, if it's a hard reset or you can flow into something else, it makes an incredible difference.
So what I liked about these classes is, and I think Tim talks about it during the class itself, is that he doesn't move like Brannos moves. He moves differently. He moves slower, and so he's more methodical in his body position and uses his hand position and body position to set up the shots more than using his feet. And so for me, it was a really nice contrast to be able to have a coach teaching a class that's fundamentally different from a lot of the stuff that I've worked with through my SCA career, and be able to get that different perspective on it and sort of broaden horizons a bit. So that was something I really enjoyed about his classes.
Yeah, he tends to be, and it's very interesting because his next class, and we'll jump into that in a minute, but his next class goes into buckler, which he doesn't fight an outside buckler game where he's moving and doing all these things. He fights this inside buckler game and pins and traps. And I thought, you know, much like how some really good polearm people, or you know, even greatsword people will pin and trap on people's swords and hold it and kind of follow it until they can go into something else. You know, the really cool idea is like this shot right here was very interesting. It's like he pulls that arm a little tighter and then chops into my other arm, even though here I'm in pretty good defense. There's my sword. Look at that, right into the arm.
And it doesn't look like
really
he's changed anything. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he changed anything, right? And there, look at that one. So he shoots a little bit of up, which dips underneath my bottom part of my sword and then comes in. So some really nice angles that Tim presents here. Look how close he is on some of these. And he creates angles at that close because he's getting his arm in positions that he can actually do stuff instead of being shorted all the time, being tight against somebody. So well worth watching this one.
Yep.
Shoot to his next one.
Yep.
So the next one, we get a lot of chance to go out, kind of go and practice something. And he does a great job with this class because everybody wanted to try it. There was a lot of people in this class. And the good part is he had somebody there kind of as a TA a little bit and that worked with him. And he went through a lot of different stuff in this class that I've never done with buckler and made absolute sense. So.
Yeah, again, another situation where the approach to that weapon style is very different from what I've experienced. What I've experienced is a lot more outside work and trying to use my feet to set up position to be able to create angles, where this is much more working in close with binds and as you said, following the sword, trapping the sword with the shield to be able to lock out your opponent and be able to set up the shots that you want. And so very, very different experience looking at what he taught in this class versus how I usually fight buckler.
Yeah, and if you'd see, I mean, this is just a part of the people there. This class was really well attended. He did a really nice job going from person to person. We didn't have enough bucklers to do stuff, but we could also use swords, like you can see here. We're just using a sword as one of those. But the best part here is everybody really did a nice job working with each other. I thought the team up, like Antigone said earlier, she had a unbelt, which was
Leofric.
Leofric. He did. Good part is he kind of understood what we do, and then he did a really nice job. We hardly had to pay attention to you guys because we did walk over. It's like, oh no, you guys are going. This is good. And usually you're a couple of steps ahead, already moving faster and doing stuff like that. Best part is, one nice part here is Antigone was out at everything. I'm not sure anybody could keep up with her at Pennsic, but she's been sending me some videos of some training sessions and some practices she's been to. And I thought, lead and follow was probably a great class for her, because she's really, I'm seeing a lot of that in those classes. So nice job, Antigone, and great job.
Thanks. I'm just traveling the world this fall, so I
awesome.
might be in your kingdom at some point in the next couple of months.
Cool.
Who knows where I'll be?
So yeah, if I tell you, if you fight buckler and want, you know, that long range buckler thing and want to add some spice and variety to your life, you need to watch this and understand. We've been doing some of this mostly with polearm folks, trying to help them understand how to essentially really kind of use Tai Chi effect, where you're just hands on their, you know, bucklers on their basket, and you're just following it. And that creates a lot of opportunities for you and takes a lot of opportunities away from your opponent. Takes a lot of practice though, because you can't be, this falls right into all of these other, including footwork drills, that you have to be connected to your opponent, and you can't be expecting stuff or guessing at stuff. You literally have to let yourself go and be in flow with your opponent, and not tense, and follow those things. And he does a wonderful job. You can tell he's been doing this forever.
And this was also good for really like using the buckler for not just putting it in to block a shot, but how to put it in space to either block their shield from moving through, to preempt their shield from blocking, to preempt them from blocking in with a sword block. So he's doing a nice job about how you use the buckler, not just as a shot blocker, but also how to manipulate your opponent with some of the things.
I was wondering what was happening to the camera there, and then it's like, oh, that was me unscrewing the camera so we can get a little bit more close up.
Oh, is that why I was so shaky? I was wondering what.
Yeah, and walked around a little bit more. I think
this might be when I took over.
I think so.
Cameraman duties for this class and tried to follow him around because he had the mic on him, so I figured it would make sense to keep the camera on what he was talking about instead of showing something completely unrelated.
And this is another place for us as the Coach's Corner to try. This is something I'd really like to try in the future, is add some other people to help us with our classes, including follow instructors around and with a camera, and be able to capture moments much better than we capture them now. Sometimes we just set up a camera because we just don't have enough staff, and we run stuff. But when you get this scenario where you're just on top of each thing that's happening, you get so much more out of it. So this is one of those pieces. I'm hoping next year we'll put a call out and see if anybody want to come out on certain days or certain times and kind of be the camera person and follow the instructors around so that we could get even better video for you. So this is definitely one of these concentration points that we're going to try to have.
Yeah. Apologies for the shaky cam while we were taking the tripod and turning it into the monopod. But once we get somewhere, it should be nice and stable to watch.
I'll say that Count Randall has been really putting out some great video that's very steady and kind of follows people around, and kind of some of the things he's playing with is really awesome. So hopefully we can incorporate some of the things he's doing with his camera work now that he's kind of on board to helping out.
Yeah, I agree. And again, he just put out stuff this week that was really fun. And I'm hoping that maybe we can look at getting a camera, or a different camera or two. Some can't do what we want to do. I mean, I've looked up a lot of stuff, and phone still tends to be the easiest way to live stream stuff. But the walk around cams, the 3D walk around cams, and grabbing certain streams in those really work out well. You just have to have post production type of deal.
And some of this we can also work with gimbals to make the gimbal the phone, so it's not quite,
exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next one. And if you want, Guillaume, you could probably start killing some of the other ones so that you can start seeing the names on them.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. So we are at, Herd System, Mechanics for Armored Combat.
Hey, I think I know that person.
Maybe. Yeah, so typically this class has been taught in the past as kind of more for shorter or smaller fighters. We really packaged it that way in the past because we wanted to make sure that we were pulling in the short and small fighters to let them know that these mechanics specifically are great for them and to give them some new tools in their toolbox to be able to create power generation and have a good fundamental. But one of the things we've heard over the past probably about year and a half, 2 years is that we've had a diverse number of people coming of different sizes and different ranks within the society. And all of them have said, we really think this translates to everyone, actually. It's not just short, small fighters. And the reality is that's true. And so Brannos challenged me to repackage the class for absolutely everyone. I was a little bit confused as to how I was going to name that. And so I came up with some sort of odd name because the reality is that this all came together with Duke Sven, Duchess Helga, and myself spending a whole kind of 3-day weekend at my house, and then just working on the Pell and going through and figuring everything out to kind of help me with my body and shop mechanics. And then from there, we realized, oh, we can package this out of class and kind of help and teach and distribute this to the rest of the society. And so that is what at least Helga and I have been doing, flying around teaching this class pretty much in almost every kingdom at this point. So in this class, we just are addressing just the basic fundamentals of how do I move my arm and what are the kinetics between my hand, my shoulder, my elbow, through my core of my body with my navel, my hips, and then driving from the knees and toes. And this class is 100% build up. So we start up top and work on, as you can see here, how does my shoulder move? How do I get tension in my shoulder? Then how do I move my elbow? And then how do I move my wrist with it? And this right here is a plate pass that we do that forces you to have your hand flat, which is how you would throw the flat snap. So the first thing we teach in this, if you're a brand new fighter, is this exact concept and how to throw a flat snap first before we teach you how to move or do anything else. And so that's really kind of what we're doing here is giving you a fundamental base to start from and building up from there. And I was very, very fortunate that Her Majesty Nessa was able to join me and be my TA in this class. She's taken this class multiple times and has helped TA several times between Helga and myself. And so I was very fortunate that she was able to join me because I definitely had more people than would fit under the pavilion when it was raining.
Yeah, and the good part, and give folks a feel, the first couple of days of Pennsic of these classes were extremely hot. In fact, most of the classes were extremely hot. Here we had luck on the day we have a tent that we can use for a little while. We lose it the last couple of days, but nice part was we were indoors. We were still able to do things, and I think the best part, you can see it's pretty well attended. And everybody's getting something, and we're spending time thinking about fighting, and we're spending time thinking about technique. And I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces, about becoming a better martial artist is the more time you spend about doing these things, the more time you watch different classes, and maybe something that's totally outside of what you do or can do. But it still helps you understand how others may be doing it. And I think that was a really important thing. We take a lot of these mechanics, and like you said, Antigone, last year you kind of did this class a little bit too for short people. And I think we had a mix of everybody in that class as well. And yeah. I was like, I'm going to bring that home. And, right now I got a couple of people that are probably 6'2", 6'3" using it because they're the same mechanics, same good mechanics. We change hand position or angles a little bit, but that elbow and the engagement, and not everything has to be up here. Even that engagement dropping is that same engagement. And I think it's really helping people see how to integrate the elbow and that get that sword, that across the sword and hand across the body, and the kinetic chain work together a little better. So really good class.
I really enjoyed going through this class, and it is not even the first time not even the second time, listen through this class with you either live or on video format. But since I have spent the past year in PT and trying to figure out the various joint problems in my body, I am quite literally relearning how to function in my body and relearning how to fight, as I am finally barely starting to get back to it. And so even though I've been through this class before, it was good to come at it fresh with my brand new body, as it were, and really get to focus in on those fundamental techniques and trying to make my body move that way now. So thank you for doing this.
I'm glad that that it seems like every time anybody takes this class, they get something from it. One of the things that we try to really focus on in this class is not just here's how to move your hand, but we try to focus on why. Why is it this way? What is the purpose behind it? How does that work? And if we're teaching how and why rather than just the motion, then that can translate and you can take that and adjust that to you a lot better if you understand the concept of it. And so that's one of the key things that we try to incorporate and make sure that's there to kind of help everybody drive home that, you know, maybe the exact way that we're showing you isn't going to work for you, but the concept and idea behind it does. And so that's one of the key things.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because even last night we at practice we have a newer fighter here who's relatively tall and thin, but he's kind of my understanding is semi-professional golfer now, and so he does a lot of golf. And we are going through some sword mechanics with him, and I asked because I don't play golf, I don't know anything about him. Like, where do you place the ball? And it's like right dead center, right? And that's where that point of contact is. And it's interesting because as they're swinging, the power generation is this elbow coming in and all the way to the ball, and then a release after hitting that ball, right? And it was and even talking about how his body was aligned. In golf, they tend to roll their shoulders, and of course they're a little rolled over, but fundamentally underneath them from almost lower back down is essentially a stacked neutral position. And so it was a very interesting conversation with them, but it also allowed them to think about what they're doing already, these good things that they're doing already, and why they work the same way with a sword. And we can't get much different than necessarily golf and swords, right?
No,
but it turns out physics be physics.
Right.
Yeah.
Knowing how your body moves and why is really important. And so we definitely, you'll see in some of my classes, and especially if I'm working like one-on-one or small classes, I'll ask people what sports they've done, what's your background, and then you kind of take that information of like, okay, well, if they're golfing, then they know how to use their shoulders, they know how some of their body moves. They're probably not going to have the greatest footwork, but they definitely have some concepts and knowledge, versus
but
somebody...
they do have the twisting feet, and they have and they have weight shift. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so if you look at like what somebody's done, you can go and watch that sport. Like if you don't know anything about the sport, go watch. Like, how do people move? What do they engage with their body? Like, how does that translate into fighting? And if you learn that about as many sports as you can, then when you do get new people in, especially, you're able to speak kind of their language and translate it for them. So that's one of the key things I always ask people. What do you do? What do you do for fun? What's your sport hobby if you have one?
Yeah, and it was actually, I posted an article today a little bit about learning style. And, one thing I've been starting to ask people is, would you rather just go feel and execute and kind of spar to figure out what's going on? Or are you a person that finds it a little more comfortable executing some type of drill and learning a drill and essentially being successful at a drill first? And I get both answers, and that's perfectly fine. The key is that they realize that, you're thinking about them, and they get a chance to figure out which way they want to see it presented. And I think that goes a long way in our sport. And I think we have to spend a little more time making sure that we cover those things.
Yeah. Someone in from another sport like that may already have a really good idea of what way they learn best. So why not just tap into that immediately?
Well, and I would say that goes beyond sports. Everybody has something that they do, some type of hobby. And if you can understand enough about what it is that they do as their hobby, you can find ways of presenting ideas that they can process through the scope of what they do as a hobby. I've talked before about music and using music as a way of talking about concepts in rhythm and talking about concepts in how we're working within a fight. One of the guys in Eldemir has recently been laureled for his painting, and we've had conversations about how he approaches his art and his mentality in approaching art, and how he can use that in approaching fighting. And so it goes beyond sports. Sports is easier to translate, I think, but really anything that somebody does, if you can understand it well enough that the way that for me, I find a lot of things to be multidisciplined. The way that I approach a lot of different areas of the things that I do, I use a similar type of mentality for. And so even though it may not be physically translating, mentally, a lot of the stuff does translate.
Yeah, and I think the key point that I really want to make on that, just tail end of it and close it up, is teach to the student, not to what you particularly are comfortable with. There are times when, I get somebody brand new in at our practice, and I have they tell me they already know. I have to figure out how to teach to them, and I need to meet them with what they know and how their body works. And if you can learn to be flexible like that, you're going to have a lot more success.
And you're going to retain people better.
Yes.
I was going to say, one of the things I really liked about this class was, Antigone, your willingness to go meet people where they were and say, okay, you're doing this now. And I thought I was doing it. I thought I understood. And you said, no, just tweak this a little bit. And okay, now it makes much more sense. And so you're willing to go both around to people and in a very, a very nice way, just going through and saying, okay, let's just tweak this. And you did a very good job and you had a whole range of everybody here at this class too. And I thought it was great that you're able to address misconceptions and you're able to go through and also work with people who already basically had it down perfect. So, so I enjoyed the class.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump to the Madu one.
Yep.
Oh, you're
So
going
this
to
is
be both
kind of
mine
Madu
back-to-back.
101, right?
Yeah. So I have been developing kind of a Madu class, thinking about it for probably the past 6 months. Helga actually challenged me and asked me to build one because there really isn't anyone out there like teaching a very kind of basic fundamental class. We often teach Madu fighting one-on-one. There isn't really a whole, at least in the past, there hasn't been a huge enough draw to kind of do a class like this. And I'll be honest, when I got asked to do it, I was like, yeah, sure, I could throw something together for the 3 people that'll show up. No problem, Brannos, I got this. And then about 2 days into me being at Pennsic, I felt like half the site saying they were coming, and I did kind of feel a little freaked out about it, to be honest, because I didn't feel like I had a class that was great for 30 plus people. And so a little bit of nerves going into this class, but overall the key that I wanted to get here is that the Madu is, and I say it a lot, and I'm going to make a drinking game out of this class, actually, this film, is that it's diverse. And it definitely has a lot of opposition from various people through the society. In my opinion, unless there is a unsafe reason for the equipment, or if the equipment's not safe, in other words, well, then yeah, we shouldn't use it if it's not safe. But if something's safe and you just don't like it or you don't understand it, that's not a great reason to try and change your kingdom's rules or even the society rules. We should let people kind of use and have fun with whatever it is they want to fight with, if that brings them joy. Regardless of if you personally think it's a great weapon style or not, if they're enjoying it, that's what we need to do. Because honestly, there's a lot of people that fight in the SCA that they're not here to become dukes or win a crown list or whatever. They're here to just have fun and enjoy the sport. And so I find that a lot of the people that fight with Madu are so incredibly different in size and what they like to fight with and how they approach it. And we discussed that through this whole class, is that every single one of the modules that showed up, none of them were the same, not a single one of them. And I think we had like 15, maybe almost 20 of them.
Yeah, in fact, I think we had them laying on the ground. So
yeah.
Go back and we can
or
take a
jump
look.
back because it was right there.
So at the beginning of the class, I asked everybody to bring their modules and lay them all in a row so that we could see them on film. And the whole reason for this was to talk about how everybody built their module, what it looked like, and then what did they look like, right? And some of these modules are, you know, very extreme and different and very unique, like this one right here that we started off with. And some of them kind of look very similar, and some don't really match the person as well as it could be, and that's because of their kingdom's rules. Some kingdoms have definitely kind of adjusted their rules to outlaw certain things, such as the length of the module or if it has a shield attached to it. And, you know, that's to each kingdom their own. I'd say that if you live there and you're not happy about the rules, and advocate for change, prove the reason why it should be changed, and that that there's no reason to kind of have those limitations. But we definitely had a really good time, and I think everybody had fun kind of matching the person to the module and talking about why it works. Because once you understand why each module type works and how it works, it's so much easier to understand how is it going to fight? How is this person going to fight with it? And that's really kind of what I wanted to do at the beginning of the class, is introduce that. And then we definitely talked about rules, because that was a subject that everybody wanted to discuss. So we did talk about that a little bit. But the back half of the class was talking about, okay, now how do we actually use just the basics of this? How do we start with a basic drill? And in there, doing Pell work is useful for module, but you definitely have to do it differently than how you do it with your sword. So we set it up more for a fencing kind of style drill on a Pell, because if you are a fencer, then, I mean, you're kind of used to stabbing things. You understand how the stabbing angles and ranges and things like that happen. So I have found that some of our fencers did really, really well when they transitioned to module just instinctively, because they understand how that game is played. But when we're talking about drills for module, the concept is pretty simple. You're just going to make your Pell, whatever kind you have, look like it has the chicken pox all the way around. Yeah. And we talk about like the lozenge or the reverse kite, and that's how you kind of, you know, where you want your shot placement to be on your Pell. And then standing, one of the bad things that you'll see with module fighters sometimes is that if a module fighter is super stationary, they're going to die. It's not a weapon that does well in a stationary kind of environment. It needs a lot of movement, and so we discussed how to incorporate that in your drill, and that's moving around and how to step around your Pell and kind of incorporate all of that. So that's kind of the back half of the class. I do think this class probably needs to be an hour and a half to really get into some of those drills and concepts. It was kind of difficult to fit it all into an hour, because there's just so much to it, because this is an offensive defensive weapon. It plays with all ranges. It's really difficult to put this in an hour class. So hopefully I did it justice.
Yeah, it's one of those pieces where you know, especially in this one, because there's a lot of presentation of, hey, all of these things, all these types of modules are just, you know, different. You know, they're still considered a module, but they're different because of either rules, sizes, how you fight. You know, if you fight long range, then you might have a little longer module. If you used to have a little shorter range, it may be a shorter one. Points may be even different. You may not have points on both ends. In fact, there's a number of people out west that just use blocking stick, and which is fundamentally a module, just doesn't have points on it at all. And so there's just so much. It's such a broad weapon. It makes it a little difficult. But the good part is being able to see the different types gives people an opportunity to say, maybe I should try one of those, right? Maybe that's my weapon. And you went through each one and talked about maybe why it works better for an individual. And I think that was a really good part. But yeah, I agree. The adding, adding the drills and things like that at the, later on, makes it harder because now you're trying to rush. So it becomes either gets broke up a little bit into 2 classes, or maybe a 101, 201.
Yeah, I think, we discussed potentially having like little one-on-one or one-on-two seminar classes with different coaches running at times to kind of focus down on concepts as sort of an idea at some point. And I mean, this definitely would be one that would lend itself well there. Honestly, if I could take the entire rules conversation and chunk that. By the way, if you're Marshall out there and you have control over your rules, if you could just help us out and just streamline the rules society-wide so I don't have to talk about them, then that would have saved me probably 20 minutes in this class. We could have talked about drills more.
That is true.
It's okay. Honestly, I think this whole big portion at the beginning where you did go through each person's Madu and comparing it to them, and before even seeing who owned each one, you were sort of breaking down the different size, shape, how you might do this, that, and the other, what this weapon tells me about this person, and how very spot on you were pretty much every time once we revealed who the actual owner was. That to me was sort of the most eye-opening part of the whole thing, because I admittedly have not used a Madu before and have only fought against them a little bit. And so I personally have been drastically underestimating the complexity of the weapons form. So
yeah, I'm glad that presentation worked. That was kind of the idea behind it and the what I was going for. So I'm really glad that came across. I was a little bit worried about it, but I've watched the video now and I'm pretty happy with that part.
Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next.
So next we have His Majesty Sig, Fundamentals of Fighting. So I'm going to play this video for just a bit, and then we have a handout that he had that I'm going to bring up on the screen in a moment. If you want to just talk a bit about it, and then I can switch to the handout, or would it be better if I switch to the handout first? What do you think?
No, I mean, let's talk a little bit right now, and then let's bring in the handout, and then we can talk a little more. These type of classes are interesting because they're a little bit more like episodes because it's all presentation, right? And not everybody learns in presentation, but one really nice part that he does here is engages. Not only engages, but a lot of what he talks about are, personal things that he struggled with. And that's why he wrote them down. And he gave really great examples of his failures and learning from those failures. And I think that's what really made this class so good for me, and why people were engaged in an hour just discussion, open discussion about what's going on. He's also a really wonderful talker.
Super relatable.
Yeah, I thought he was very relatable.
Yeah, this might have been my favorite class the whole time. Like, it was very well put together. When we share the handout that he gave, it's nice, succinct bullet points. Excellent thing to sort of walk away and look at and be a reminder of what was in the class. I want to take his 10-ish rules of fighting and blow them up and print them out on a poster and hang it up at fight practice.
So go ahead, Guillaume, pop his up. I guess that part I really loved about this too is he thought enough about it and he wasn't the only one that did this, by the way, but he created a document, and then he also added what the hell, those little
QR code
to it, so you can get directly to the document. And the Kern actually put out a QR code for some feedback and everything on theirs. And I was like, oh, these guys are great. I mean, they did a really nice job putting all of these types of things together. So, and here it's again, he has a document that talks about each one of these pieces in each box. But can you zoom in on, zoom this at all?
Yep.
And let's go to the 10 rules. There we go.
It's
go ahead,
a little fuzzy, but
why did you like the 10 rules so much?
Because they seem, one, they're really exceptionally good reminders of important concepts, even if you've learned them all before. And if you haven't learned them all before, then it's a really, like, it is a well put together, succinct way to learn them. And it's
yeah, and I agree. I mean, I love number 2.
And I want to hang it up at practice, because there's so many times that whatever we're talking about working on, whatever I'm working on with someone else, whatever, it would just be appropriate to walk over and point at one of them and go, that's what we're doing. This is what we're working on. This one. And have that, quick one-line reminder of the broader concept. Like, it's never your opponent's turn has come up at least once per practice since Pennsic. At least once.
Yeah, I think for a lot of these, anybody looking at them, if you look at each of the different rules, there's some point in your fighting career where that is something that has come up.
Yeah.
I mean, looking down the list, I'm thinking of like, yep, that's happened. Yep, I've been there. I've thought that one. I got to remember that one.
I mean, they're all relatable concepts, and I like the fact. I mean, you just kind of put them, very succinctly, and said, "This is," and it's okay to win. We talk about, okay, it's okay, just even giving yourself permission to say, okay, it's okay to win. That's and actually want to win. It's interesting. And so a lot of these are very relatable, and you can think about it. But I think it's when it comes back to Brannos' point. It made for a very relatable class because you put them in very relatable terms. We've all experienced a lot of these things, like Guillaume just said. We've all experienced a lot of these things, and I like number 9 as my favorite. But Yeah.
I don't know. Sivrid, ignore. It stops at 9. Ignore number 10 if you.
I like it when I think in range.
I just wanted to call it number 0 here because I think that's a really important rule. You must convince your opponent that they've lost. We don't really win our fights. Our opponents have decided that they've been bested. And so reminding us that I can't go beat my opponent. All I can do is convince them that they've lost and have them acknowledge that they've lost. And so they have to acknowledge that for me to win.
Yeah, and you'll note that it doesn't say you must hit your opponent harder and harder and harder. You just have to convince them that they've lost. And there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah. And I also like that he kind of goes through some physical and mental aspects and, and then he talked about each of these. And again, you'll find them deeper in the document that belongs along with this. I think Amanda or Sadb, you just posted that document, right?
Yep. I posted in the comments the link to this exact document that we are looking at. And at the top of it, you will see the URLs and the QR codes to go to his longer books.
Yeah, he does a great job.
Go into detail about these. The medium length version is to listen to this class.
All right. So again, this is I thought in a time that we just spent time talking about stuff, this class went very well. So
and I'll just slide up here for the QR codes for anybody that wants to scan them. We'll leave them up there for a moment.
I'll say I think this class was really great for all levels. Like if you're new to fighting, this introduces you to a lot of concepts that kind of will help you as you grow. If you're intermediate, it's stuff that you've probably heard, but it's great to be reminded. And the high-end fighters, some of them are like, oh yeah, I need to remember that. But I love that this incorporates all skill levels into it. It's a really great class.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was interesting because when he first talked about it, I was like, "Ooh, a lecture, here we go." and then he totally blasted it out. It was really good.
And this was on the cold day, so we were all kind of chilly, sitting around like huddled around, being warm in the rain.
Another one of the things is I think you mentioned is like he had his 10-ish rules of fighting, and you're like, well, none of those actually really have to do with the fight itself. They're all about mental approach to the fight, and so then he had to go into his advanced concepts of actually fighting. I think that's great. It's like, okay, there's a lot of things about about fighting that that you still have to think about, not just the actual technique. I think it was nice to introduce it that way rather than focusing just on technique.
Well, who was it that talked about the Matador one?
That was Ben.
That was this class.
That was this class.
There.
Right. And in the earlier when we were online just yapping.
Oh yeah.
I think that was me, Sivrid, right?
Okay.
Yeah, when he was saying, you have to make the choice between being a matador or a bull, and he comments in the class that he made the mistake coming out to the mid realm of trying to out matador the people who are really that's their skill set, whereas he can bring a different skill set of being the bull in and run through it. And my comment was that I was watching his fight against Rongbalder in the heroics, and he was trying to out matador the matador.
Yeah, a little bit. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Yep.
Oh, you got to represent. I forgot.
Yeah, I gotta reload the videos now because of the way this StreamYard works. So it should be good now. So this is
So this ended up being a really good class.
I really like this one. I think he did a really good job presenting it and walking through like the way that he approaches thrusting is again, this is much like we were talking about with Duke Timothy and much like we talked with Antigone's classes. He's covering something he does very well from a very different perspective than what a lot of people experience. And so the idea of the setting up the opponent and with the circle drill, I don't remember what I was doing, but I didn't catch all of this part of it, and I haven't had a chance to watch the video yet. So I'll let one of you guys talk to that.
So what he did here, and I found it really good because I asked him to add some drills to his outline, and he actually put, we kind of worked on a layout of this, and then he put the thing together. The idea of this is when he fights, and he drew this circle. When he fights, he pushes people around. You notice there's a dot in the center of the circle. The idea for him is to get that person in that center and always have a place where he's going to thrust somebody, not move your thrust off to where they are or where they are at that moment. The idea is to move them into the point where you're thinking about thrusting them. So kind of the opposite way of the way we think. We're like, let's move them around and we're going to figure out where we're going to thrust them, which is kind of interesting just because of some other articles where I've read and been working on. In this exercise, the idea is to try to get the other person, and they're having a hard time understanding this concept, get the other person in the dot. And as soon as they get into that dot, you've already thought about thrusting them in that dot. So you're already in your mind thinking about where you're going to thrust them, and you already set it up. You're not thinking about, okay, here they're over here now, and then they're over here now, and then they're over here now, because you don't have enough time to develop this. It's like, okay, they're over here, but I'm going to push them over here where I'm going to thrust them. They're over here. I'm going to push them over here where I'm going to thrust them. It's like that one place, and that's constantly in your mind. It's the basket, right? The basket doesn't move. The people move. And the key there is he presented it that way, and the way he set up this exercise I thought was really good, because he's like, this is your perfect thrusting position. The key is to get that person in that place so you can thrust them. And in many, like boxing, this is my perfect shot. The key is to get that person into a place where he's going to give me my perfect shot. And that's exactly how he presents his video. So I found it really good. He also did a little bit on power generation and kind of that shift of power into that front leg, and really, where your arm is when you're doing that power and a generation of force, depending on what part of the body you're hitting. He did a nice job with that as well.
Yeah, I like that he said your target is your opponent's spine.
That is something we actually. The great thing about this class is it came before my module class, and he said that, and so I was able to reference it, and that way I could say he said it, not me. But this class was probably the number one class I wanted to take on the list, just because I do a lot of stabbing, so I was really interested in how he thinks about it and his concept and kind of approach to it, which is nothing I've ever heard before, and I've heard a lot from a lot of people in my travels, and the way he approaches the mindset and the fundamentals of how this works is so unique. And it took me a while in the class to kind of understand what he was going for. But once I did, I actually was able to incorporate specifically this idea that he presented at the beginning. And it's really helped my Madu work and my right-handed stab as well. And I'm having a lot more success with it, incorporating just some of these basic things. I did ask him for his write-up because I wanted to see everything, because I don't think he got to everything that he had on his pages. And I'll tell you, the drills that are in his write-up are stellar. They are amazing, and they're great for any skill level. They're amazing. They teach concepts that aren't just stabbing. And and I hope that once he kind of is comfortable with his write-up, that he publishes those drills and maybe does a YouTube channel of all the drills, because they're fantastic.
Yeah, I would agree. And it was interesting because this is really one of the first complete classes that he's taught. And he sat down. We went through his layout. He came back later with a not completely different layout, but a really well done layout. And he worked with somebody on these drills and his squire. And I think it gave him a lot of time to think about how he wanted to do it. This is the first time he's really taken a class from front to back, and I was really happy of this stuff. And I agree, it's just he presented it in a way that I haven't seen a lot of other people present. So
it's interesting as we think about it, because a lot of the footwork classes apply, and same thing with the ring management. It's just that he's doing it kind of backwards. He's like, how do I get the person where I want them rather than how do I get around them? So that ring management that Guillaume was teaching, about how do you be aware of where you are and how do you get someone pressured into a spot. And so I really found it fascinating. His goal is to pressure someone to a spot so that he has the perfect thrust, not to move to where he has the perfect thrust, but to pressure them into going to where he wants them to be.
Yeah, and that's a different mindset.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I took away from this one was the way he has a prime shot, which basically he's throwing almost a cut, but then just turns that and rolls it into a thrust. And the commitment level that you need to go with that, you can't just go half-heartedly with one of these. It's a committed shot. It's not an afterthought that, oh yeah, I missed that, so maybe you should throw a thrust. It's the entire intent is set up that way. And so those are 2 points I took away from this class.
And I'll be honest with you, that concept right there of like, here's what a cut looks like into a thrust. I had a fencer who was new into armored combat that's transitioning over, and they were kind of struggling a little bit. And I just taught them exactly what he told us with that. And it immediately clicked with them, and they were able to be very successful with it, just immediate. So the way that he presents that is it translates really well, and it's easy concept to use and to execute quickly. So it was really good.
All right. Let's go move to the next one.
Yep. So next we've got two from Duke Robert.
Yeah, and these were, the good part about these is they, so Robert came out the whole week, and he really attended almost all the classes. And it was really nice to get some time to sit with him and talk with him. I tell you, his personality and the way he talks to people, one of the best gentlemen I've ever seen. And it was really nice to get some melee kind of classes and understanding into these. Here he's talking about essentially different weapons and groupings of different weapons in melee. And we don't talk about this a lot, but I think the best part is it was not only different weapons, but who was the killer, right? And enabling that person and enabling your team to essentially be successful given the people that you had. And there's a lot of thought in that And as tournament people and things, we don't necessarily think about that. But when you have a 3-man unit, a 5-man unit, a 10-man unit, you have to add some thought to that. Go ahead, Si.
What I particularly enjoyed about that is the fact that he talked about it and explained how you can do this and work with those little groups on the fly as they form randomly and organically on the field. Yes, you can do this with your group of 3 or 5 that you train with all the time and specifically train to act as a unit. That's going to enhance everything he talked about. But the way he explained it all was not hinging on this must be people that you train with and therefore you can all do it already and you have mental telepathy and you know what happens. He focused really hard on you get here, you look, evaluate the situation, and then how to communicate with people, ideally people that you already know so that it can be quicker and more direct. But even he was getting into you pull up next to a stranger on the field that you have never trained with. How can you talk to them and sort of real quick figure out how to function as a little 2 or 3-man unit on the fly? And I really liked that focus because despite all the training we try to do as a group, as we all know, once you get out there, those often fall apart. You will find yourself in random mixed pairings and groups. And so it was really nice to focus in on how to do it on the fly.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the best parts about it. Yes, I think in this video, he also talks a little bit about how to create kind of a group of people to fight together. Yes. And make it exciting for everybody. And these, I love the idea is you want to create a group of people? Well, he's like, I created a kind of a free company idea. And all you had to do was fight dagger and kill somebody in a melee. And you're part of the group. And so that everybody had that in common. And, as they were like, okay, I was stupid and did this. Now I'm stupid with all of you. And, I thought it was a great way kind of, he's like, I tricked the whole kingdom into fighting melee together, and not only a kingdom, but other people that he knew and enjoyed being around. And I think that's the biggest part about melee is creating groups of people that want to be together. So
yeah, I as somebody that so since I'm from Unster, I get to fight with Callantyr a lot in melees. At some of the big wars, we try to always fight with them in some capacity because they're our neighbors. But also, they are so much fun to fight with in the melee. You can tell that they've worked really hard on building a kingdom-wide community of not just being good at working with each other, but also having fun, really enjoying being out in the field and spending time with each other. And it's infectious. I love going and fighting with them because I'm happy. I don't particularly always enjoy melees, but anytime I'm around a group of Callantyr, they're just out there having fun. I have fun just because I'm around them, because they're having fun. So I think talking about that and broaching that subject was pretty awesome. I'm glad he did that.
Yeah, I am glad he joined us this year. Jump to his second class.
Yep.
In his second class, he talks a lot more about field awareness. And this is one that everybody should listen to. I think there's way too many people that are just fighting in their own little space and not understanding not only the goals of what you're supposed to be doing, but the awareness of who is around you. And I know people that you need to be working with, but also who's in front of you and who's your dangers and things like that. And field awareness is really hard. Everybody has this kind of woo-woo moment. It's like, you just kind of have to know, there's giant groups. Well, if you're a person that controls a 5-man unit, you just need to think about those 5 people, right? And the awareness of that size. And he goes from that awareness to the next size of, maybe a whole unit of 20 people to the next size, of maybe a region to the next side of a kingdom. And, there's a type of awareness all the way through that. And I thought he did a really nice job with this. So, and he pointed out some of the simple things. And I think the hardest part there is I think actually wanted to, I'd say hardest, but I think him focusing back on, hey, I got a 5 or a 3-man unit. What do I need to be aware of?
Yep.
Right. And I think too many times we're thinking, I'm going to change the course of this whole battle. And it's like, you know, you got a 3-man unit. Think of how you're going to stay alive and who you can be most effective against. And I love that he was able to bring that down to that scenario. So he did. I thought he did a wonderful job with this class. It's a very hard subject. So.
Yeah, I was glad we were able to incorporate some melee classes. I think this was a really good one. As you said, I really like that the presentation was that effectively that local awareness, not just what's going on in the overall scenario. It doesn't matter what's going on the other side of the field. Here's the guys that we have, there's the guys that they have, and this is what we're doing, and go. So that was really good.
All right, let's move on.
Yep.
And I apologize to everybody. We're going to run just a little bit over. We got like 3 videos left. Randall joined us for this one. I'm sure everybody has been watching Randall's short post. Really good video and some really just really core subjects he talks about in short. And so I reached out to him and asked if he wanted to help and teach a class. And it was fun to listen to him. He reminded me a lot of 20 plus years ago when I first reigned and I started teaching a lot, and that excitement and all of those pieces of just starting to learn to teach and all of those pieces. It was a real joy to listen to him kind of teach kind of in a bigger, broader, longer level. So I'm hoping that we have him on a little bit more in the future. We added him as one of the coaches. I'm going to definitely kind of spot him up to talk about some stuff. And I may just ask him to grab a number of his videos and actually go through each one of them.
This was another good talk about. He was giving some point of view, which is different from what I've seen before. But he's also giving just different ways to throw certain shots, different ideas on how you approach certain shots, so he was giving a lot of things that he found that moved him to the next level. And so he was trying to give some advice, and he gave a lot of good advice on different things that to think about as you're moving to the next level, about how do you go to the next level. And so a lot of what he was these are the things that really helped for me. And so it's nice to be able to see, okay, I know it worked for me. I know it worked for some other people, and just get even more a wider variety of tool sets that work to move that further.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
I really love his energy that he's bringing, and he's bringing a different viewpoint and a completely new way of looking at things and presenting them, and I think a lot of the newer kind of fighters and younger fighters really enjoy kind of how he's presenting stuff. So I'm super glad that he is being more fruitful with his coaching and posting his video and being involved with Coach's Corner. He's also really funny. Which helps a lot.
And if you ever go to his channel, he actually does live comedy as well.
He does. He does live comedy. It's great.
Yeah, he is a very funny guy, and just enjoyable to be around. So I hope everybody gets a chance to spend more time. Watch the video. There are going to be some shocking things a little bit. I think one of the shocking things was the essentially power generation piece that he talked about a little bit. And it came from came from Atlantea's idea, but sometimes you can shock people with power, right? And make them appreciate, that I don't want to get hit with this thing. And he really discussed that a little bit as well. And he comes from a kingdom that, that's an appreciation point that they go through. So here he's talking a little bit. I know in these he talks about his basket's actually designed to be a little off. So I saw him throwing something the other day in one of his videos. I'm like, that's flat. And then I'm like, oh, no, that's not flat, because I remember he rolls his basket so the edge isn't necessarily the knuckles. So he actually cuts some of the basket out so that it actually fits that way. So I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. He changes it. You can see he really, really uses that rolling backside. So good stuff. Watch his videos. wonderful stuff. This is a longer class for him, so it's a little off the cuff for him. And I look forward to seeing how he develops his teaching style. So, all right, let's roll to the next so we can get the folks.
We're getting close. We got 2 left.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah,
guy
and I
named
think-
Duke Brannos, I think.
Yeah. And I'm going to make these relatively pretty simple. I'm teaching, and it's funny, this is the point of the class. I've really been trying to help people understand rhythm, and we actually did an episode on rhythm, which I thought was really covered more concepts than we talked about in here. But I have to say, I wasn't prepared for this class. And what I did is I pulled a number of drills together to help people understand it's not even necessarily lead follow, but understanding the connection with their other person. Because in rhythm, you're trying to build a rhythm that both of you can be in. And then you're trying to break that rhythm and create opportunities. Go to the very beginning. Here we're talking a little bit about some energy levels, and I'll talk about that later. Go to where we're hand back to back, where the hands are back to back. I think it's a little early, right there.
Yeah, not quite there, but we should be there in a second.
You're right. So this is actually the first time I've done this, because some people have a hard time imagining distance between each other. And in here, this is a kind of a tai chi or motion. The idea is minimal energy on the hand. And what we're doing is we're just walking with each other. And we're trying to stay connected. And it's very much easier to stay connected when you're getting some type of feedback. In wrestling, that feedback is usually a tie on the back of the neck. We're not grappling that person. In other words, we're not pulling, we're not pushing, we're not trying to do something. We're just holding and trying to find and create a weakness. Sometimes we'll add some energy and release and see what they do. And what we're trying to do is find where the weakness is. And in Tai Chi, is if they press hard on the hand and I feel it, I'll give it and then I'll go, right? And that's the same thing we can do with swords. So here, the more we can stay in connection, the better we have connection with our opponent, and the more we can flow and then create a rhythm that we're both in. So I had everyone try this, and this is actually was interesting watching how tired people get. One hard part here is most people, it is all about being low in your stance and having a good walking movement through this whole thing. And people were getting very tired. After this exercise, we broke the hand piece and just did distance. And then after that, we added a little bit more movement and breaking rhythm and things like that in this class. But what I found was people were getting tired because they were just thinking about all of this control with the hand and the distance. And they were losing their breath. And so the idea of rhythm and breath was thrown out the window. And we see that a lot in fighting in general. And so at one point I had them actually recite the ABCs as they were doing this exercise. And it was very interesting. I had them do it twice as long. And at the end of it, I go, all right, you remember you guys were all tired. What happened? And what was happening is why they were reciting the ABCs, they have to find points of breath inside that to say the next one, because they're not reciting them in their head. They were reciting them, verbally out. And so they had to find points of breath. And then they also had to think something more than about how hard it was to stay in stance and do this. So we added a different thing they were thinking about. And everyone's like, you're right, I'm not tired. What's going on? And it was a really interesting thing. I've been doing that a little bit more now with people that I can see are tense all the time. And so what I've been asking them to do is I'll ask them to count, or I'll ask them to do the ABCs. And what happens is they, all of a sudden, as they're going through that, they're not thinking, they're just thinking about this staying, still keeping connection, but then they're thinking about the ABCs and they have to find breath inside of them because they're talking. And it really released them from grinding into the hardship that it is to do a drill. It was very interesting. And since I learned that here and it actually worked, I've been adding it so that people can see the difference so they understand better.
I feel like that's right in there with you making people tell jokes while fighting or sing songs.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%. So I got really lucky. Well, so pickups were popping, and I wanted to go fight. And so Brannos was so kind to me. He gave me a quick little one-on-one of this class, and then we worked a lot on it later during Pennsic through the days. But one of the things I really liked and got out of this class is that it kind of took that lead follow concept and developed it more fully. And I was able to build on it. And then for whatever reason, just after being inundated with all of that, the concept finally clicked on how to take it from my brain and actually do it. Because in my brain, I understood it, the concept, but I couldn't figure out how to physically manifest that. And that's what this class did. And it was fantastic. And the other thing is having people talk. We actually, I think it was about a year and a half ago, I started making people talk while they're pelling, like have a whole conversation with me. And then while we're fighting and training, having conversations, laughing, joking, and fighting. And it definitely does everything you say it is. And of course it does, because I mean, you know that, but it does for even our newer fighters. And so I think it's a great concept to incorporate into your training.
Yeah. So I don't think I flushed out this class fully, and at some point I'm hoping to add some specific drills that flush it out a little bit more. Hard part here was to go from people that may not know how to move well to essentially rhythm is relatively difficult, because some of that you already have to be able to build a rhythm. You have to know how to do it. So if you're in music, it's hard to build rhythm when you're learning the notes, right? So that's that same way here.
Yeah, Brannos, maybe we can talk about this one offline and think of some concepts of how we can try and help people get through that, because there are some lessons from learning rhythm and music with taking the notes away to be able to focus on that. So we'll explore that a little bit.
Oh, that'd be great. Maybe me, you, and Sivrid can get together and talk about that a little bit.
Sounds good.
All right. Move to the next one, and then we'll wrap it up on this one. I think this is my actually the first class I taught. I tried to stay out of a lot of teaching this year, but somebody asked specifically for this class. Here we're going through fundamentals of essentially how to block shots. But in this class, I am not teaching how to use a spear necessarily. Most of this class was designed for spear in melee. And, we have to understand how to do stuff and how to do stuff small enough, keep point on all the time, and be really disciplined about your spear work when you're in a line with others that you're protecting. And I think later on we get a little tighter. But one of the big pieces we talk about this is it's all about the small in a lot of this. In other words, I can't take around, if you're in a line, we're all in boxes stacked next to each other all the way through. And at any given time, that box, which is relatively small, depending on how cramped you are, you only have so much space to work in. And you always need to work small in that space. In other words, if I take one step out and do something and get back, I'm still in that space. But if I take 2 steps out and I'm out of my box, then if you're going forward, you're way out. You're alone. Nobody can help you. If you're going backwards, you're abandoning the people next to you. In other words, if you have a 3-on-3, now you have a 2-on-3. So there's a weakness at those points. Side to side, that's explainable. I mean, 1 foot side, the small step side to side, you can kind of get away with that. If you take 2 steps out of your box, you're bumping into the person next to you. And now it's a 3-on-1 because that person's thinking about being cramped, being disabled from being able to do something. So this is all about constantly being small. Even what we're teaching here is the smaller you are in these little blocks, the more likely you are engaged, not only with the person across from you, but you're still engaged with that whole line as they get more compressed. Now, when we go into open spear, that can be a lot bigger because you have side-to-side movement, and you have back and forth movement because it's a one-on-one game. And and you're going to run around a little bit. You can do things, you can essentially throw and bail to either side. You don't get those opportunities in melee. You don't get to bail because you're there protecting people. And I just wanted to, the good part is I wanted to go ahead and go through a class again on understanding how to be aligned and how to, that you're there for everybody else too. And that's what we just went through. This is a very old class, actually. I used to teach it all the time. This is fundamental. It's something we would do constantly every Sunday. We really developed a great team on this one.
At our melee practice. We still do this a fair bit at our melee practices through the summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not as much as I'd liked. I mean, really, we do this every day. A good part about doing something like this every day in a controlled scenario is you have that many more times of practice compared to somebody that just does it in melee. It's like, how good are you? Well, I go and fight spear in melees. Well, like, how good is that other person? I go and fight spear every week. And in a controlled environment, practicing specific techniques. It's like, wonder who's better.
Well, one of the interesting things when Duke Robert was talking about, Bobby was talking about generally all SCA melees for armored fighting, what does it end up? It ends up in a spear duel with lines set up, 6 feet apart from each other. And so this is actually a really useful class just because so many of our fights end up here. And so if we don't know how to finish it or do something once we're there, then we basically say, okay, we're just giving up a major part of our fight.
I really liked the pacing in this class. It was perfect for me where I knew a little bit about spear, but not enough to be kind of like, okay, I know how to do all this. The pieces were bite-sized and I got to work on them and build on them. But I felt at the end of the class, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt like it was just enough to kind of get me somewhere, but also I had the time to really enjoy the concepts and figure them out and get to use them. So the pacing on this class was probably the best out of all of them that I took.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think this one's a really well-practiced class. I think I've done this one for years with our local fight practice. I think I wanted to mention, you talked about that touch and feel and the Tai Chi aspect in the rhythm class. And I find that comes into play with, especially with matched weapons, but I use it in spear, I use it in longsword, I use it somewhat to a degree in sword and buckler, but being able to engage the other person's spear and give some pressure, relieve some pressure, and feel that how much resistance they're giving and being able to work with that, I think feeds into this. And I don't know, I don't remember if we covered in this specific part of it because we're teaching the different pieces of the technique. But when we get into especially one-on-one spear dueling, you'll get that feel involved. And as I said, it translates over to fighting with longsword or fighting with any other weapons forms where you're going to have the weapons engaging on each other. You're going to have that tension between the weapons and be able to have that feel. And so there's a bit of crossover between the two. And as you had mentioned, it's small in movements, small in attacks, small in defense to try and keep focused and keep it narrow. I was just sort of thinking last year at Pennsic, I gave an impromptu version of this class to a couple fighters that were fighting spear on the pickup list, and their spear tips were flying all over the place as they were knocking things apart. And said, I interrupted them and said, hey, can I give you a little bit of advice? And gave them like the 10-minute version of the class, and then narrowed everything down and brought them in and sent them on their way. And so this is a very well put together class. It's been very well practiced, and a number of us have been drilling it for almost our entire SCA careers. So very well done.
Yep. All right. Well, I think it wraps up our classes, doesn't it?
Yep. That's the last one.
That's everything.
Great. And we apologize for running a little bit over for everybody. Hopefully you get a chance to watch these classes. Like I said, I was super happy with all the instructors that did it. And we also, just to make sure everybody knows, we not only were many of them instructors, but they were also technical people that helped along the way. I know Guillaume helped me an incredible amount with the sound and getting mics on people. Sadb helped to get cameras around and make sure my camera was working well. Louis helped always, like, kind of making sure the camera was in the right place and where sound was working right. And he would just constantly check back and forth. And Sivrid also did the same thing. Doing this type of thing takes a little bit of everyone, and it is overwhelming. In fact, going into this year, I was like, we'll see how attendance is. Maybe we won't do it again. Attendance was very good. I'd love to hear back from folks how they enjoyed them, and if they still want to, next year have more classes. I know we've already heard back from people from Golf Wars and stuff like that they'd love to see some classes out there. And we may actually try to do that this year a little bit if we can figure out some timing. But let us know if you can, hit the feedback button. There's, I think Sadb developed a feedback form for us. Let us know what you'd like to see taught at maybe some of these seminars. Let us know if you think they should keep going. Let us know if, hey, it doesn't matter to me. I just get stuff offline or I like the videos. That's fine. Just the feedback goes a long way. We like hearing it and listening to it and trying to get stuff out that everybody wants to use. So, Antigone, before we go, really first time as not first year because it's second year helping us, but really first time as a full-time coach. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just really excited that I'm being given a chance to kind of give back to this community of Coaches Corner that has helped me so much from almost day one of my fighting. Everything that this kind of group and community does is amazing. So I'm so happy to be a part of it, and thank you guys so much for including me. But I will say I have seen Coaches Corner, the feedback out there just on social media wide, and it's all positive. Everybody is really enjoys the classes at Pennsic. They want you guys at Golf Wars. They like the classes. We reference these YouTube videos. I have the whole catalog, and I'll just go through and I can pull a class out and send it to somebody if they're asking me about a concept. And so that's so important. And there's nothing else out there like this. There just isn't. So yeah, that's what I got.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm so happy to have you with us. So. Sadb, the old timer.
This was fun. I like live classes. We should do more of them at more Pennsics. Maybe Golf Wars. I don't know. Also, I did enjoy doing this sort of post review. There are sometimes I think, why do we need to talk about the classes? Why not just go watch the classes? But having this summary and the recap and not necessarily covering the material, but saying, hey, here's what it was about and what we liked about it. I'm already feeling like, oh yeah, I do need to go rewatch this one. Oh, I really want to go try that drill. I forgot about that one. Like it just this hour and a half has like gotten me excited again. So that's why. Thanks for having me on for this.
That's awesome to hear. Sivrid.
Well, I was only taught one class which had the sound go out, so you don't get to hear that one on this.
Yeah, we learned a lot while we were.
We learned a lot about technical details, but I spent I pretty much attended almost all the classes because I was not up to full fighting. I'm recovering from an injury, and I learned a lot, and I put a lot of it already into practice. There's stuff that I've found myself using from Antigone's class. There's stuff that I found myself using from Valharic's class. I've started throwing that prime preparation cut shot into a thrust, and I'm amazed. It's like, oh, now that I'm starting to get it in line properly, it's really a cool addition. So there's a whole variety of different pieces that I picked up from every one of the classes. Like I said, I think the comment made earlier was that these really feed on each other. Really having the footwork classes led into the manipulation of the field classes, led into that push-pull, led into that, well, how do I get someone in the right place to thrust them? And I think that's what was really cool this year is some of it was planned, some of it was, I think, it's fighting and we're working into the same concepts. And I think that came off really well this year. And the other thing was suggestion box for people who want to give suggestions. I dropped a link to the suggestion box into the chat.
Thank you.
Yep.
You can also find
Guillaume.
the suggestion box anytime in the featured posts at the top of the SCA Coaches Corner discussion group page.
Yes.
So I wanted to take a moment to point out, if as you've been watching these videos and you're seeing the people participating that have come out to learn, you see a lot of the same faces in all of the videos across the 4 days that we did classes, 4 to 5 hours per day. And a lot of the same people came out and were at a lot of the classes. And I just want to take a moment to thank the community for coming out and engaging with us, coming out and taking the opportunity to learn, because we need that feedback from everybody else. And being able to have somebody willing to come out and learn makes it a lot easier to teach. We can learn from each other. Sivrid attended all the classes. I attended all the classes. Antigone was in most of the classes. Sadb was in most of the classes. Brannos was in all of the classes. But we appreciate the community coming out as well. And it gives us that opportunity to be able to teach, and through teaching, help learn ourselves. And so I just wanted to thank the community, both the people that were able to attend in Pennsic, the people that watch the videos online, the people that are here today and come to watch our streams. We appreciate all of you out there.
Well, I can't do much better than Guillaume did. So what I will say is we are trying to put together another book episode, because I'd like to get Tristan back online and involved. He's had a bit of life, and I know this is part of his life that he loves, so I'd love to get him back. We kind of have, we had somebody else write in, and it's like, hey, can you do an episode like this? And it's kind of covering different parts of like 10 books. And so I'm going to try to, he sent it to me a couple weeks ago. I've been poor at exercising it. It may not be in the next 2 weeks or 2 weeks from now. But we are going to try to get that done. I'm going to try to pull together our book team, which includes His Excellency Louis and Tristan and myself. And if others want to join, we'll pull them in. And we'll go through different concepts that kind of in each book talked about maybe a concept that was they found most important in that book. So it may not be from front to back of a book, but we're going to talk about what maybe was the touching topic in multiple books. So we will try to develop that episode for everybody, and hopefully it's enjoyable and everybody gets a chance to listen. And other than that, thank you for joining us on another Wednesday night, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, one way or the other, with something going on. And hopefully you have a wonderful weekend, and keep learning. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody.